Hello, it's Thursday, April 30th, and welcome to Minutes That Matter. Well, after signing the Munich Agreement with Chancellor Hitler on September 30th, 1938, Neville Chamberlain declared that he had negotiated peace for our time as he waved that document coming off the plane. However, we know that this negotiated peace was a ruse, and less than a year later, Hitler would invade Poland and World War II would begin. And while mankind would have hoped that two very tragic world wars would have sickened us from any more conflict, the clash of communism and democracy ushered in a new type of conflict in 1947 called the Cold War. Regular war wasn't enough. Well, sadly, history has demonstrated that no matter how many times man has sought to negotiate peace or establish peace by force, permanent peace has always been elusive or short-lived at best. Now, the reason why we're talking about this today is that it leads us to Christ's next subject in his Sermon on the Mount. It is the second outward activity that should characterize citizens of his kingdom. And so if you're there in Matthew chapter 5, follow along as I quote verse 9. "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God." You know, one of the major themes in the Bible is peace. God calls himself a God of peace in Philippians 4:9. Jesus is called the Prince of Peace in Isaiah 9:6. But I want us to understand that the peace that Jesus is going to talk about in our passage is not what the world knows as peace or seeks to achieve. You see, God's peace has nothing to do with politics, military victories, or summit meetings. It's not about statesmanship or arbitration, compromise, or negotiated truces or treaties. Rather, this peace of which Christ speaks deals with the conflict between God and man and points to the personal peace that only God can give to the soul of man through Jesus Christ, and that only believers can represent to mankind in this world. Well, Genesis 1 and 2 opens with peace in the garden between man and the Creator, but then in chapter 3, we see man choosing to sin and rebel against God, and now conflict, not peace, characterizes each person's relationship with God and with each other from the moment they're born into this world. Therefore, the peacemakers that Christ is referring to here in Matthew 5 are not those who seek to eliminate conflict between people or countries, although that is commendable. I don't want to say that that's evil. The peacemakers that Christ refers to are those who seek to help people make peace between man and God. But before we talk about how that happens, we need to talk about what peace is. Now, as we said earlier, many think that peace is simply the absence of conflict or strife. Others think peace is total agreement with their opinions. Some think peace is doing things my way and being happy about it. But in contrast, God's kind of peace includes righteousness and truth. In short, peace is a standard. It is a standard that is established by which an individual must submit in order to live in peace. That peace is accomplished only through a righteous standard. The righteousness of Jesus Christ given by the cross and communicated through the Word of God. And mind you, that righteousness cannot be gained by religious activity, acts of kindness, or some other selfless behavior. Again, those are good. But it can only be gained by someone who is perfectly righteous, providing himself as a punishment for our sins so that his righteousness would make a way of having peace with God. Jesus was that person. Colossians 1:19-20 says, "For it was the Father's good pleasure for all the fullness to dwell in him, and through him to reconcile all things to himself, having made peace through the blood of his cross, through him. I say, whether things on earth or in heaven." So think about what Christ went through on the cross, the mocking, the cursing, the physical abuse, pain, suffering, all by himself. And at the end, the lightning flashed, the earth shook, the veil of the temple was torn from top to bottom, and yet through all of that, God brought peace. God's greatest righteousness confronted man's greatest wickedness, and righteousness won. And because righteousness won, peace won. This peace is now acquired through admitting we are sinners, confessing sin, and asking forgiveness for that sin, and declaring our faith in Christ's finished work on the cross and his resurrection from the grave. Because when an individual does that, they are saved from God's wrath to come. They have a restored relationship with Him, and they now have peace with God through Christ's righteousness. Now, we'll finish talking about this verse tomorrow and what it means to be a peacemaker and the reward of that. But until then, if you'd like to know more about having peace with God and the forgiveness of sins, would you please leave a comment below or go to our link in the video description and reach out to us through email? Because friends, we would love to have that discussion with you. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. Well, if this was an encouragement to you, hit the thumbs up button. If you're not yet a subscriber, hit the subscribe button. Hit the little bell button if you want to know when a new video comes out. And look, if you think somebody would be encouraged by this message, or if you think somebody in your life needs to hear this message, repost this on social media. We would certainly appreciate that. So from all of us at Minutes That Matter, have a blessed day.